Everybody did. Unless you're here under a judge's order, you all volunteered to come, right? There you go. That's a whole different sermon. All right, Exodus chapter 20. We're still there. You should have it bookmarked for the next 5 weeks. Well, if you're going to do 10 commandments and you're only on number 5, right? We're going to be here for a while. I'm doing one a week. If you are a parent, raise your hand. That's a parent. And you survived raising a child. How many have got them into some of the teenage years? Teenagers now, huh? Yeah, congratulations. We're going to need to fast and pray for some of you that are raising teenagers. I bet you more than once you wanted to look at your kid and quote this one. Honor your father and mother, then you will live a long, full life in the land of the Lord your God has given, and because you don't, I will take you out of it, and I will create another one look just like you. Sometimes we want to add to the scriptures because of our emotions, you know. Yeah, I added to that one. Raising kids is not for the faint of heart. There was a father of 4 teens who said, there's nothing wrong with teenagers that reasoning with them won't aggravate. Found that true? Yeah, get into a good, calm conversation, and that doesn't work well. I heard one father say, I have 5 children, 2 teenagers, and 3 I like. Thought that was really good. Yeah. Of course, you've heard this one, insanity is contagious. You catch it from your kids. Yeah. Now, I was reading a while back, and there was a philosopher, and he was complaining. He said, our youth now love luxury. They have bad manners, contempt for authority. They show disrespect for their elders. They love to chatter in place of exercise. They no longer rise when elders enter the room. They contradict their parents, babble before company, gobble up their food, and tyrannize their teachers. Does that sound right? Yeah. This was Socrates 2,500 years ago. Okay. This was us when we were teenagers, right? Nothing's changed. We just think it's today's people, kids that have, no. Welcome to the club. All right. So we are looking at this verse 12, if you're in Exodus chapter 20. Honor your mother and father, or honor your father and mother. Then you will live a long, full life in the land the Lord your God is giving you. Honor. Webster's dictionary defines honor as to respect greatly, regard highly, treat with deference and courtesy. And one of the Hebrew meanings of the word honor is to be heavy and weighty. So when we honor God, we're giving an understanding to him of his heaviness, of the weight that he carries in our life. Likewise, our parents should not be thought of as something that's just light in our lives. They are weighty in our lives. There's a deep honor that takes place, a reverence, a respect that they deserve. And that's what God is telling us. We need to respect and give them the reverence they deserve. Why is that? The 10 Commandments, I'm going to add in an explanation. The 10 Commandments were written on 2 tablets, 5 on each. The first tablet contained the laws regarding a person's relationship to God. We've been going through that, right? The Lord is your God. Don't misuse his name. Honor the Sabbath. Remember the Sabbath. Keep it holy. These are all the things. Don't make an idol. This is all relationships to God. And the second, as we'll get into next week, shows our relationships to one another. Don't lie, don't murder, don't commit adultery, etc. Okay. Now, it's interesting that this commandment to honor your parents is written on the first set of tablets, having to do with our relationship with God. We think it would have to do with our relationship with others, but it doesn't, because the way we honor our parents is the way we show honor to God. Now, I've taught this for a number of years to Hannah's house, and usually when I come and say, we're going to talk about honoring your mother and father, there's always 1 or 2 people that kind of bow up on me. Okay, this is the most bow-up teaching that I do. You're not going to tell me to honor my mom and dad. I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm offering you an opportunity to honor God. What you do with that's up to you. All right? Now, the Jewish writers, philosophers, wise men wrote that there were actually three partners that go into creating a human being: God, the Father, and the Mother. Nobody's here without a father and a mother. And there are no fathers and mothers without God creating an Adam and Eve. That makes sense. So if someone honors their parents, God considers it as if we are honoring him. And we honor our parents because by doing so, we're honoring God, and that's why we give the honor and reverence to our parents as they deserve it, because they're human beings created in the image of God. Now, in the second version of the Ten Commandments, this is found in Deuteronomy chapter 5, Moses expands it a little bit. He says, honor your father and mother, and then he adds, as the Lord your God commanded you. Now, this stresses the fact that despite our natural love or lack of love for our parents, they should not be honored merely out of love or feelings or sentimentality, because emotions are fragile and they can get in our way. They're always subject to change. We should always be aware that our respect for our parents is part of our obligation to God. Okay? He's not asking you how you feel about your parents. He's asking you to honor them. Now, I encourage you not to make the respect your children should give you hard for them to give. Right? The way it was hard for you, some of you, it's hard for you to give the respect and honor that are due your parents because of the way they treated you. I get it. Don't do that to your kids. But we're all in the same boat. Why? Because we're all sinners, and I'll come back to that. So respect for our parents is a cornerstone of the Bible, and Jewish and Christian tradition are based on a series of links that are taking place from one generation to another. Abraham, Moses, Mount Sinai, where the Ten Commandments come through. We work it through David. We work it through the prophets. We work it through the Messiah. It's all the same message. Here in this fifth commandment, we honor our father and our mother, and it guarantees that we're going to obey the first four. Now remember, these commandments were not given to an individual. They're given to a nation. They're given to a society. And the society needed to learn that we're going to honor our parents. We're going to honor our authorities. And when you honor your parents who are teaching you about maintaining the Sabbath and not making an idol and not misusing the Lord's name, and understand he's the one that brought us out of our slavery to sin, we end up going right back to God. The entire nation goes right back to God. Now, as soon as I get into this, some of you are thinking, and it's not hard to predict, but you don't know my parents. You don't know what they did to me. You're right, I don't. But it's hard not to guess that there has been rejection and verbal, if not physical or sexual abuse or neglect. And not everybody is emotionally free to just love their parents. I understand. Some of you are not free to even relate to your parents. Yet those who attain the freedom and the maturity to honor their parents is a step towards your own emotional health, because it brings you a step closer to what God has created, the order that God has put things in. So whether or not your parents have earned the right of your honor, if you honor them anyway, it's better for you even if they don't get it. Now, what happens if your parents are dead? I'm going to get to that. There's still a way to honor your parents even if they've passed on. The fact is, not everybody chooses to give honor. I get it. How many have heard of a basketball player named Shaquille O'Neal? Okay. He wrote a rap song. Did you know he wrote a rap song? It's called Biological Didn't Bother. Because his biological dad left him and his mom when he was 6 months old. And Shaq didn't want to have anything to do with him. Well, his dad showed up at an NBA game once, and somebody pointed it out. And Shaq just said, that man's dead to me. Didn't want anything to do with that relationship. Here's another thing. We've invented a couple of memorials in this country. It's not biblical, but it's what we do. Mother's Day and Father's Day. Those can be really difficult days for some people. We're going to honor our mother, and there are people sitting in the congregation going, not mine. Not my dad. I get it. And then we have this commandment from God. Now, it doesn't say honor your mother and father if they've been good and they've earned it. It just says honor your mother and father. What about the fact that they were not good parents? Well, they're still not asking you if they've earned it. They have the position of motherhood and fatherhood. For instance, you may not agree with the current president of the United States or the one we had before. It doesn't matter. The office of the president is what we honor. You may not like, and you may have gone to school with, and you may have hated the officer that pulls you over for speeding. But you respect his position, right? I'm not asking you about his personality. And you really don't want to get into a shouting match with an officer who is there that has the entire backing of the United States. Okay. Yeah. You keep pushing it, and the SWAT team comes over. You say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, thank you for the ticket. I'll be better. Okay. They may be wrong. You may be wrong. You stay respectful. Okay. I think that every one of us has a childhood memory that is not optimum. How was that? That was pretty well put. But we can still work through them with God's help. Worthy or not, our parents should have our honor because they are our parents. And it's a mature thing for us to do. There was a Christian author named Lewis Smedes, and he offers a really great perspective. He says, the commandment to honor parents doesn't tell children to feel happy about their parents or to enjoy camping with them or even having them over to dinner. It says nothing about happy emotional relationships. All that it commands is honor. The commandment is concerned with family structure and the role of parents and teachers and leaders in the family. He goes on to say this, and he separates love and honor. He says, love is a natural impulse. Honor is a moral choice. Okay? We have all met somebody that within about the first 5 minutes of the conversation, you go, oh, I'm going to love this person the rest of my life. This is good. And you have. You've also met other people that within the first 5 minutes, you're looking for the exit. And church has just started, and you're supposed to fellowship with them, and it's really hard. I get it. Yes, ma'am. A moral choice. Honor is a moral choice. Lewis Smedes, S-M-E-D-E-S. Even when love is absent from a relationship, there's still a place of honor. The best relationship should have both, but we've already realized on earth, the best relationships don't always happen. Okay. So the other thing is this commandment is given to us as adults to honor our adult parents. You don't yell this at a 4-year-old. They don't get it. Okay. You don't even discuss this with a teenager. You can't get through the hormones. You can talk to them when they're about 27. Right? How many of you didn't grow up till you were way into your 20s? Yeah, okay. So when we leave our mother and father and cling to our spouse, we are leaving that covenant relationship with our parents, and we're starting another one. This means that our parents are not our primary instructors in our life anymore. Okay? So now that we've left home, what is our relationship with our parents who are still at home? And God tells us what it is in this passage. We honor them. Their lives are heavy and meaningful in our thoughts and prayers. We don't do things in a way that would misuse the name of God. Remember last week? We said taking his name in vain. It says misusing his character, misrepresenting who he is. I taught on this, and we were in the chapel. And this has been maybe 2 years ago or so. Somebody came up to me, and he said afterwards, the stories I tell about my dad changed after I forgave him. Let that sink in for a moment. Okay? When he came to understand the forgiveness God had in his life, and the stuff that we've all done that should not have ever been forgiven by anybody, but God has done that. And then he offered that same forgiveness. If I've been forgiving, I'm going to forgive another. I'm going to let go of it for my dad. Forgiveness is letting go of the hope of a better past. It's not changing it. Forgiveness means to release, and he released his dad from any sort of judgment, any sort of penalty. And when he released him and understand he's a sinner just like I am, the stories he told about his dad changed, and so did his prayers. That's good stuff. I don't want to say or pray or tell stories about my parents in a way that would misuse the name of God. So we're going to look at two themes this morning. And from them, I pray we gain a deeper understanding of this commandment so that it will affect not only those who are here, but you know what? You may be able to affect somebody else you're going to talk to later, and they're having problems with their parents, because I've never met somebody that didn't, right? All right. So write this down. Why we should honor our parents. Why we should honor our parents. So I want to give you a couple of those. Why we should honor our parents. First, it teaches us to honor all authority. Why we should honor our parents is it teaches us to honor all authority. That's the first one. Now, the second part of the commandment says the reason we are to honor our parents is so that we will live a long, full life in the land the Lord has given us. Now, too often we see that as a reward. The reward is you'll get a prize, long life. That's not what it is. It's not a reward, it's a reason. And the reason is this. If you build a society in which children honor their parents, the society will survive for a long time. Remember, he's concerned about the nation of Israel surviving. And if children learn to honor their parents, the society will last longer. The opposite is also true. A society in which children do not honor their parents is doomed to self-destruction. Here's a fact. The health of a nation depends on the health of the family unit. When a nation puts the needs of the government over the needs of the people, you have communism, and that eliminates God. We saw that in Russia, Cuba, China, it's worse in North Korea. It happened in Vietnam, Cambodia. If you ever want to see a movie that'll devastate you and make you cry, watch The Killing Fields. Okay? And when they had killed the parents, the communist leaders would go up and they would put all the kids in a classroom. They had a blackboard, and they had a stick figure of a mother and a father and two children, and the kids were supposed to go to the blackboard and cross out the parents because the government is now your parent. The government is now your God. And that's why communism doesn't allow for Christianity, because the government wants to be your God. That's why it doesn't like churches, because God is God. And that's why so many churches got in trouble when there was a shutdown a couple of years ago for COVID, for the pandemic. The law said you can't meet together, and a lot of churches did anyway. The pastors got arrested. You know why they didn't want them meeting together? Because the governor wanted to be God. And the pastor said, you're not God, God's God, we're going to obey God, we're not going to obey you. Okay. One of the first things a communist society tries to do is break the child-parent bond, shifting the allegiance of the child to the government. The fact is, the most influential, creative, vibrant, and long-lasting societies are those where the family comes first and the child-parent bond is sacred. I don't know how much news you guys are watching. Probably not a lot, okay? Or have been before you came here. There are school districts that are pushing the gender affirmation far. Okay, so now if your 7-year-old or 8-year-old decides that they're not a girl, they want to be a boy, and you need to start calling me a boy's name, the school district is saying you cannot tell the parents. Yes. You can't tell the parents if your child is having a gender issue. Well, the media is all over this. I didn't have that growing up. We knew the difference between boys and girls, okay? Yeah. So now if your 8-year-old girl decides that she wants to be a boy and the parents are in a divorce settlement in California, if one parent will not affirm their desire to be another gender, they can't have the kid. It goes to the other parent who's going to affirm their gender. So now you got teenagers who can't get a driver's license, they can't buy cigarettes, they can't vote, they can't buy a gun, but they can tell the doctor, cut my breasts off, I want to be a boy, and the doctor will. And you can't tell the parents. This is America. There's a child-parent bond that's being broken on a number of issues. Okay, this is evil. Okay, this is nothing new. Trying to break that bond has gone on forever. Okay, we're just seeing more of it now. So, just want you to be aware that God put the family unit first, and when the family unit is healthy, the nation is healthy. But our nation's not as healthy as it used to be. When I was growing up, when you were growing up, when you went to school and in the 3rd grade, the question was, what does your dad do for a living? Today the question is, which parent do you live with? Okay. We got issues in this country because we've gotten out of line from honoring our parents to honoring that which will give us what we want. I didn't get a lot of what I wanted from my dad. But I remember saying to my 3rd grade teacher, he dropped me off on his motorcycle. We were in San Diego, and introduces me, and I get to meet my teacher, and my dad says, listen, he can be kind of mouthy, and if he gets out of line, you have my permission to spank him, and then call me when he gets home, I'll spank him again. Hi, my name's Jimmy. I'm here for my first day of school. Okay. You know what? Jimmy didn't get out of line. He was going to honor his teacher, and he's going to honor his dad. You know, today, the connection between honoring our parents and honoring and maintaining civilization is not something we think about very often. There's a lot of parents that don't want the honor from their children because, well, if they're going to honor me, it assumes that I'm an authority figure. Hello, you are the authority in their life. A lot of parents want to reject that. A lot of parents want to be loved by their children, not honored. But the 10 Commandments doesn't tell us to love our parents. It tells them to honor them. In fact, we're told to love God. We're told to love our neighbor. We're told to love our enemies. We're told to love our strangers. Nowhere in Scripture does it say love your parents. Why? Because God was smart enough to know sometimes love in that way is just not possible. You have an emotional bond with your parents, whether you like it or not. And sometimes perfect love is not going to happen, but honor can. Some parents have so traumatized their children that loving them is not emotionally possible, but we can still honor them. Proverbs 30, verse 17 says, "The eye that mocks a father and despises a mother's instructions will be plucked out by ravens of the valley and eaten by vultures." Boy, don't you love it when Scripture just doesn't sugarcoat anything? You know, isn't that nice? You just want to think about plucked out eyes and vultures in the desert. I'm so glad I came to chapel this morning. Boy, Jim, what a feel-good message you're bringing us. Proverbs 30:17. What it's saying is that a person who disrespects their parents is put out to suffer from the elements, and judgment comes on them because their eye, if you will, their inner attitude is one of mocking and disobedience. They conclude that their parents are not worthy of respect, and they suffer in relationship to their parents and therefore in their relationship to God. Does God cause this? No, it's a natural result of treating authority with disdain because we have not honored our parents. When you learn to honor your parents, you learn to honor authority. It is so far from my mind how some people will walk up to police officers, spit on them, call them names, flip the bird in their face, and realize they can get away with it. I don't get it. Could never do that. I think every once in a while that baton just needs to draw a little blood, and they'll stop doing it. But they've got rights. Weird. Very weird. There's a book called The 10 Commandments, The Significance of God's Law in Everyday Life. And she was a talk show host I listened to a lot in California named Dr. Laura Schlesinger. And she's Jewish. And she writes in her book, parents are teachers of faith and morality. What God is to the world, parents are to their children. Unfortunately, some parents become so focused on the element of friendship or their own convenience, comfort, self-fulfillment, happiness, or love life that they forget their job is to help mold moral character so their children will have the strength to do what is right in a world that sometimes encourages them to do otherwise. A parent is a source and the origin of their children. They're the protector. They're the guardian of their children. And a parent's first job is to be a parent that raises a child in the respect of themselves and God and other adults. It's our job as parents to raise our children to become good members of society. Unfortunately, too many parents want to be their kid's friend and playmate. More than once, I've heard a parent say, oh, well, my kid's just my best friend. Can I tell you something? If your best friend is 20 years younger than you, you need to expand your horizons. Your social circle needs to get bigger. There's no way your child 20 years younger than you at 15 can be an emotional support of you at 35. Here's the second reason we're to honor our parents. Because the honor you give is the honor you receive. Luke chapter 6, verse 38 says, give and you will receive. Your gift will return to you in full, pressed down, shaken together to make room for more, running over and poured into your lap. The amount you give will determine the amount you get back. Give what? If the first thing your mind goes to is money, you've missed the point. If you have $1 billion in your bank account and no friends, you're the poorest person in the room. What should we give out that runs back to us? Love, forgiveness, respect, honor, that will come back. How many of you are familiar with Grimm's fairy tales? It was a perfect name because they were pretty grim, some of them. Can you name any? Grimm's fairy tales? Just fairy tales written by two brothers. You've heard of them. Little Red Riding Hood, Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, Snow White. Okay, yeah. And these are all stories that have a moral point, right? It comes back around trying to teach us something. This is one that I came across while I was doing the study. An old man lived with his son, daughter-in-law, and their 4-year-old boy. The old man's hearing had become dull and his knees trembled. When he ate, he often missed his mouth and spilled food on the table. The son and wife were disgusted at this, so they put him in the corner behind the stove where they fed him from an earthenware bowl, but not very much. The old man would look sadly at the others and desired to be with them. One day the man dropped his bowl and broke it. His son and daughter-in-law were upset and scolded him, but he said nothing. So they bought him a bowl made of wood and made him eat from that. Not long after, they came upon their son playing with some pieces of wood. The dad asked what he was doing. The boy looked up, smiled, and said, I'm making a trough for father and mother to eat out of when I get big. The man and the wife looked at one another and began to cry. Then they brought grandfather to the table to eat with the family once again, and they never said a thing if a little food was spilled on the tablecloth. We are an example to our children for the way we treat our parents. The The honor you give is the honor you receive. Side note, I want to tell and remind single parents to use caution when talking about the other parent in front of your children. Okay? If you're not honoring the other parent, your child will not either. It's not your child's fault you're not with the other parent. Don't use them as ammunition. I married a single mom. She was single for 14 years. And Barbara was hush-hush when it come to him. He was not so hush-hush. And I would often say, well, if your mom would have, it's your mom's fault we're not together, and if she would just have me, we would do it. We could be back together as a family. So now the kids are running back to Barbara saying, why aren't you loving Dad? Okay. If you can't say anything nice about the other, just don't say it. What happened to the boys is that they grew up and discovered who their father was as they were adults related to their adult father. They came back individually. They both came back to Barbara and said, we owe you an apology. Barbara never said a word. She knew what would happen. And I was always honorable in my discussions about their father. Because I was going to have to answer to God about how I spoke to about somebody other's child's parent, especially when I'm married to the mom. All right. Let your children grow up, see the truth. You did. You learned it about your parents, right? Okay. Let's look at the second section. This is called How to Honor Your Parents. How to honor your parents. Number one, live righteously. And I hope you didn't see that one coming. Live righteously. Proverbs 23, 24 to 25 says, the father of godly children has cause for joy. What a pleasure to have children who are wise. So give your father and mother joy. May she who gave you birth be happy. So this is the picture of proud parents because their children live wise, righteous, and a moral life. And righteous living comes only from living life in tune with God. This is an important proverb to remember, especially if you're still having problems with your relationships or you have parents who don't want to be part of your life. You see, even the most calloused of parents are proud when their children are successful or they're moral or they're gracious people. We look back at our parents, we can all tell stories about them that aren't so kind. We can recall times in our life when there was pain, emotional or physical or a number of different ways. Why is this true? Because we all had parents, newsflash, that were sinners. Guess what? Parents, your children has parents that are sinners. Yeah. We can tell stories about our parents, and our children can grow up telling stories about us. So when we have parents who have caused more harm than good in the life of their children, the children can still honor them by being upright in their own living. As I said, this man told me the stories he tells are different once he forgave his dad. Micah 6:8 is a good scripture to memorize and live according to this phrase. I love this. You've heard it before. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly before your God. I'm going to act justly. I wasn't treated justly, but I can act justly. I can love mercy. I don't want to love retribution. I don't want to love reconciliation. I want to love mercifully. I can walk humbly with my God because I know that I'm capable of doing what my parents did. How can I live different than? So regardless of your strained relationship with your parents, when you fulfill this verse, you're honoring your parents because you're honoring God. What if my parents have passed away? Then live righteously, and by doing so, you'll be honoring them who gave you birth. You'll be living according to the way you were created to live. That's how you honor your parents. The second thing we can do is we can love graciously. Love graciously. Proverbs 19:26. Children who mistreat their father or chase away their mother are an embarrassment and a public disgrace. Now, in biblical times, and up until the Industrial Revolution, most of the world was involved in the production or the harvesting or the making of things relating to just basic eating and wearing clothes, farm related. Okay, so for centuries, a piece of land that the parents were on would then fall to the children, would then fall to the grandchildren. I like coming to the Midwest where the cities are older than the ones I grew up in California, and people will say, well, this was my grandfather's farm. Cool. You know, it's just an older society. Now, in this proverb that I just quoted, the children are kicking the parents off the farm, and they're taking it for themselves. And he's like, no, you can't mistreat your mother and father and chase them away from the place that they grew up on. One pastor writes, whenever word came to my childhood home of some aged parent who was in dire financial circumstances, my mother would respond with one of her favorite bits of folks' wisdom. Mom would say this, you know, one mother can raise 5 children, but 5 children can't take care of one mother. So for centuries, children have been the economic foundation for their elderly parents. Before nursing homes, before Social Security, before all sorts of ways to send your parents out because it's too much trouble. I also get it that we are in a different society, and that when you're not taxing people at the 30 or 40% rate, mom can stay home. Okay, so when the Social Security or when the federal income tax first came out, it was like 1% of the upper 1%. It's not that way anymore. When my parents were raising me in the 60s, my dad could work, my mom could stay home. When you're bringing home 90 or 95% of your check, Dad, you know what difference that makes in a family? But when you're bringing home 70 or less, mom's got to work. You see? And so our society is now in a tax structure that is almost prohibitive for mom to stay home, unless dad's doing 3 jobs. My dad did 1 job. My mom didn't go to work until my sister and I were both in school, and she could work part-time and then be home when we came home from school. Okay. So for centuries, children have been the financial catch-all for their parents. They were a security. Large families were a blessing because when parents grew older, the children could take care of them and be their providers. So it's not only wrong to exploit our parents, it's up to us to protect them from exploitation. As we get older, we get a little bit more vulnerable. Now, Barbara worked at a bank. And every once in a while, an elderly person would come in and say, I really want to send some money to this ministry over in Sudan or Nigeria. And Barbara would look at that and go, this is a scam. She knew it. It smelled it. And she tried to talk them out of it. But she couldn't tell them no. If they wanted to send their money, they could. Solomon wrote this in Psalm 125, 4-5, it says, like arrows in the hands of a warrior are children born in one's youth. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. They will not be put to shame when they contend with their opponents in court. We're going to need our family around us when we get into a situation that is out of our control. Elderly parents should be able to rely on their children to take care of them in their vulnerable years. Can your parents be strong-willed? Yes. Can they drive you nuts? Yes. Well, I got parents like that, pretty much. But when you honor them and take care of them as the way God has intended, then we've just done our duty as human beings. Third thing we can do, we can speak lovingly. Speak lovingly. Proverbs 20:20. If someone curses their father or mother, their lamp will be snuffed out in pitch darkness. Woo! A lamp is a picture of somebody's life that's cut short. And we all have a choice to speak curses or we can speak blessings. If you have a lifestyle that continues to overflow with a hatred of your parents, contempt for your parents, animosity towards your parents, Scripture is saying your life's at risk. So we get to choose to speak blessings, not curses. Proverbs 18:21, words have power in matters of life and death, and those who love them will savor their fruit. Words matter. The words you say, sometimes the words you don't say. For sometimes, I get it, for some of us, it will take God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, and a host of saints for you not to blow up at your parents. Okay, I get it. But if we will learn to speak in a gracious way to those who have given us life, it will change not just our life, but maybe even theirs. What if they're gone? Then change your attitude and allow the blessings of God to come into your life by letting that go and speaking the good things. There's nobody that I've ever met, personally, I suppose there's been a human being, that is 100% evil and had no redeeming quality. There's only one or two stories you can remember about them that were good stories because they had this talent or they had that going for them or they like to do that. Stay on that. Don't let the negativity find home in your brain. Okay. All parents will disappoint their children. That's what sinners do. They disappoint. Learning to be responsible for our reactions to that disappointment without dishonoring the one Christ died for is still important. Okay? See how none of this has to do with your emotions or your love or your feelings? So much of this is an action, a choice that I'm going to make in the way my mind goes, the way my words come out of my mouth. Speak lovingly. Fourth, listen attentively. This is where most of us will get in trouble. I know it did on me. Listen attentively. Proverbs 23:22. Pay attention to your father. After all, he gave you life, and don't ignore your mother in her old age. Now, there comes a time where more than our financial assistance, especially if our parents are better off, they don't need finances from us. They need presence. They need you to listen. They want to have a conversation. They want to know they're still contributing. And if they can't contribute, you're still there. Stay in touch with your parents if you still can. Both my parents are gone. To my shame, I remember a couple of times my mom called and I was in the middle of something and I was impatient. And she'd say, I know you're busy. Yeah, I was busy. Until I got the phone call that I knew she wasn't coming out of the hospital. And all of a sudden I found 10 days of my life to be with my mom, but I couldn't find 10 minutes on the phone. Yeah. Not my finest moment. And I still look back at that and regret it. Makes me wonder when I'm old and senile if the kids will give me any attention. Or they'll only come visit me for 10 days when I'm dying, you know. Lord, save me from that. Yeah, you know, parents can share those same stories over and over and over, and as soon as they start with, I remember when, you can tell the whole story and finish it for them. Let them tell the story and finish it, because you're going to want to yourself. All right? It's still better to have your parents around repeating stories than not have them. And I try to teach that to some people that still have their elderly parents. Mom's driving them nuts, and I'm like, yeah, but you still got it, and I don't have mine. Be thankful. And this guy just kind of looked at me and went, yeah, you're right. Sometimes it just takes a simple way of doing that. Yeah. So here we are. Every person here has sinners as parents, and now that you're a parent, you're a sinner, and your kids has a sinner as a parent. Great. So where do we go with this? Galatians 6:2. Share each other's burdens, and in this way obey the law of Christ. So Christ removed the penalties of our sins, which is eternal separation from him if we accept him and his goodness in our life. The fact remains that our shortcomings, my shortcomings as a Christian man, is a burden to somebody in my life. And the longer you've known me, the more the possibilities are that my stupidity has caused a burden to you. Conversely, not only are you a burden to somebody else's life, somebody else is a burden to yours. That's why it says, bear one another's burdens. Yeah. You don't have to, you just look around. Somebody's a burden in here. And you're a burden to somebody else. As much as you like yourself and believe your own press releases about how good a person you are, yeah. Right? So, we can choose love, honor, respect, forgiveness, goodness, gentleness. We can choose these in the way we respond to one another. How am I going to honor my parents that are dead? I'm doing it right now. They raised me correctly. Pretty good contributor to society, wanting the best for other people. My parents were here. They'd be proud of what Jim has become. To honor God, to honor his word, to share the goodness with other people. Did I have the best relationships with my parents? No, didn't see my dad for a lot of years. We never talked. When I got a call in Baton Rouge from my mom, who was living in Mississippi, that my dad was dying in California from cancer, I flew to California to be with my dad. And I cried the last time I saw him. I honored him by being there. Did I listen to the same stories again? Mm-hmm. Did I turn out to be the bad person in a couple of those stories? Mm-hmm. Did it matter? Mm-hmm. When we honor one another, then however long we will live in the peace of Christ because we will be honoring God at the same time. Father, thank you for this day that you have made. Thank you for your goodness in our life. Thank you for giving us such simple instructions on how to build a good society, on how to build a good congregation, on how to build a good nation, by honoring those who are in authority, by respecting those who have given us birth, by not always understanding, not always liking it, certainly not always agreeing with it, but not misusing your name in the way we represent it. And let us learn to tell better stories when we learn to forgive. And thank you for this in your amazing name. Amen. All right. See you next week. Commandment number 6.